Design, for me, is about shaping the entire physical world that surrounds us. Design is everywhere. Not only are furniture, glasses, and everyday products designed, but also all advanced, non-consumer, technological solutions require a process that shapes them through and through. Wherever I am, I look at a vast array of solutions, both those created by humans and those that are the product of nature. Furniture is a tool for everyday life. These are tools that allow us to be together. I would even say they are a kind of social instrumentarium, because humans are herd, social beings that need to integrate through cooperation, conversation, and the passing on of tradition from generation to generation. All of this happens on chairs, at tables, in spaces designed with tools that direct us toward one another, enabling us in various configurations to develop both our civilization and our society. So furniture is like the silent heroes of our everyday lives. We often don't pay attention to them. But historically speaking, they always reflect the spirit of the times. They are ever present as something that truly supports us. Furniture is that type of creativity which is relatively close to people, shaping our daily lives, and therefore it changes as our everyday life changes. Pre-war furniture looks different, and users' needs also evolve over time. Homes have changed. We no longer live in large estates, but of course, furniture varies just as much as our homes do. Furniture is not just functional objects. They are also cultural artifacts. For some reason, in books about the history of design, furniture often serves as icons that tell the story of their time. They are very close to humans, almost like their nests. Furniture says a lot about people, which is why it is such an important element of culture, perhaps the closest one within the art of design. In some sense, the armchair or chair has always been a focal point for designers across historical periods. And here, in addition to observing humans, or, in a broader sense, the planet, because today we no longer focus solely on human-centered solutions, but on the larger community, it is crucial to act responsibly toward the planet and the environment. This all comes into play during the design phase, where concepts are confronted with production technology, which is evolving very dynamically. Today, we can create solutions that are, for example, circular. At the end of a product's life cycle, it can be broken down into its core components, and elements of an advanced structural design can essentially re-enter the market, not just through recycling, but perhaps through refurbishment or other solutions that push us toward circularity. This perspective on durability, on creating fewer but better things that last longer, and integrating them into a closed-loop process is vital. The historical context is also very important. We cannot think about the future without knowing the past. In some sense, we constantly refer back to it. Even creatively, in my own work, there's often a form of tribute to a designer from a bygone era. Much like references in cinematography, in physical products, in furniture, we also have a dialogue with the past. It gives us strength, context, and a sense of continuity.
Coś, co powoduje, że jest to pewne kontinuum.
At the Polish Design Gallery in the National Museum in Warsaw, we strive to tell the story of Polish design from the beginning of the 20th century to the present day. Furniture, in particular, represents a segment of design that very effectively reflects the spirit of its time. We begin with Zakopane-style furniture. It's important to revisit that moment when Polish designers drew inspiration from folk art. These themes of return to ethnic roots and the native folk motifs will reappear in Polish design many times over. In our narrative about Polish design, an important moment is the interwar period, and here our gallery presents several different threads. A particularly fascinating example is Jan Korzonkowski's feather chair, with its beautiful fan-like form in the backrest. This chair is also interesting because it reflects the entire design philosophy of WAD Cooperative. This group of artists believed that furniture should not be adorned with artificially added decorations. Instead, decoration should emerge naturally from the idea, the construction, and the character of the materials used to build the furniture. Beyond WAD, in the interwar period, it's also worth mentioning the community of architects connected to the Warsaw University of Technology. These were creators inspired by the Bauhaus movement. Here we see all those pieces of furniture made from bent steel tubing, super modern at the time and still retaining their appeal today. Visitors often ask why we display examples of furniture from a well-known Swedish furniture company at our Polish design gallery. But that's not the case. These are Polish pieces of furniture created in the 1930s, during the interwar period. One of the important products in my portfolio, our studio's portfolio, is a project that references the historic tulip design by Kruszewska, the renowned Polish designer. We are not ashamed to say that this connection exists. Of course, it's an entirely different product, tied to an entirely different time, but these references are there, and there are many of them. Polish design also has a lot of its own distinctive characteristics. Polish design, in my opinion, and I have always been a promoter of this way of thinking, is above all resourceful design. Resourcefulness is a trait that emerged in times of scarcity, born from the idea of creating the world with minimal means, simply because we didn't have the resources to create back then. Today, we have everything, including advanced technology, and design has become an element of fashion. But in our studio, we try not to follow trends. We strive to create things that last, things that never go out of fashion or out of use, remaining somewhat timeless. Their materiality, what we make these things from, is key. That's why it's important to approach material selection for each project with a great sense of responsibility. Of course, recycling plays a role too. In our studio, we design many projects today using materials that are production waste. This is known as pre-recycling, something that allows us to make use of resources that already exist. We certainly can't forget about Roman Modzelewski's armchair from 1958. It was truly exceptional for its time. The designer had to acquire the material, fiberglass mat and epoxy resin almost miraculously from some laboratories. I won't go into the borderline illicit activities he had to engage in. In any case, this is an outstanding example of Polish design that was well grounded within the broader European and global design landscape. It shows that, despite the Iron Curtain, these creative currents managed to break through all obstacles. Of course, it couldn't happen on an industrial scale at the time, but in his studio, the designer succeeded in producing even a small series. A few of these pieces were created, and we are fortunate to have two examples in our collection, one red and one black. The history of our company, as well as other Polish companies, shows that this period was indeed a good time for design. Many publications have been written on why design from that era has become timeless. There's a historically proven belief that minimalism and a certain economy of form, characteristic of modernism, particularly from the 1950s and 60s, ages better. This was the case for collections by Roman Modzelewski and other artists and designers whose work we are implementing. I'm referring here to Professor Kuczma and Professor Knota. Our idea is to bring historical furniture designs into serial production using contemporary materials. A prime example of our approach is the RM58 armchair, whose name comes from the designer Roman Modzelewski, with 58 being the year the chair was designed. Originally, it was a handmade piece crafted from polyester laminate, a labor-intensive, small-batch artisanal process, which meant the design would always remain a gallery piece, expensive and accessible only to a limited audience. Our goal was to mass-produce this chair, making it relatively affordable, so we chose appropriate technologies, such as rotomolding, allowing us to make this chair out of plastic. Another variant is the upholstered version, which you can actually see behind me. This version not only achieves new design parameters, but also enhances functionality. Users typically expect an armchair to be soft, whereas the original designs were quite hard. Internationally, we're witnessing recurring waves of popularity of certain eras. This is evident in fashion, but also in design. Right now, there's a clear resurgence of furniture designs from the 1950s and 60s, with the 70s beginning to appear as well. Interestingly, many projects from the 50s and 60s have proven to be timeless, enduring the test of time. They were innovative, both technologically and aesthetically, for their era, and they still seem innovative today. They remain attractive to modern consumers of design. Both Czesław Knoty and Aleksander Kuczma, along with other designers whose collections we're implementing, created remarkable, timeless furniture designs, mainly seating design, which have also withstood the test of time. However, similar to Roman Modzelewski's case, these projects never made it into serial production. The communist era was a very particular time, as we know, and there's much that could be said about it. Preference was given to very simple, mass solutions, and there were also technological limitations. The technologies these designers experimented with, such as advanced laminated forms, curved plywood in more complex 2- or 3-dimensional forms, were out of reach. At the same time, financial constraints and expectations regarding interior design back then were limited. There's a very current discussion about what exactly defines Polish design and whether it has any distinctive characteristics. Summarizing all the studies on the subject, the conclusion seems to be that there's not necessarily something uniquely distinguishable. From my perspective, shaped by my years in the industry, this is proof of positive development. It means we are offering high-quality European design, competitive in terms of aesthetics, materials, and price, and that's already a significant achievement. The concept of our company, which is to offer historical designs using modern technologies, has been validated by international reception. While in Poland, the story itself may have been well received for reasons beyond practical considerations, abroad, the product was judged solely on its merits. The fact that, historically speaking, more than half our sales come from international markets, spanning China, Korea, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, all of Europe, as well as the United States and Canada, proves that we've managed to deliver a project and product that is appreciated in its own right as a good solution.
Sam w sobie, per se, jako dobre rozwiązanie.
The design from the communist times, those fortunately bygone times, marked by scarcity, often featured solutions that could be described as of somewhat low quality, not only in terms of design, but also in terms of workmanship and the materials used. That was simply the nature of the system, and as a result, Polish design became stuck in a somewhat uninspired place. It hit a kind of roadblock. However, Polish design was incredibly advanced back in the 1950s and 60s. The products created during that time never really saw the light of day. They were largely confined to designers' workshops. As a result, we now have a wealth of Polish design works that have only recently emerged and can finally be celebrated, whether in museums or even in people's homes. Staying in the 1960s for a moment, I'd like to draw attention to an example from the Poznań design scene. It's worth noting that Poznań has always been a stronghold for furniture. Here we showcase a chair made of synthetic material by Aleksander Kuchma. This time, it even had a chance for industrial production, because factories back then were encouraged to innovate and introduce synthetic materials. However, this remained largely theoretical. Such projects could be successfully created for exhibitions, but as was typical in the reality of the communist times, many things were merely just for show. We have to mention, of course, the iconic 366 armchair by Józef Chierowski. It hardly needs any introduction because everyone knows it so well. This armchair has been elevated to the pedestal of Polish design, thanks in part to our exhibitions. We value it because it is so well designed. When it was created, it met the needs of its users while maintaining a modern style with a dynamic structure.
Ale też utrzymane w stylu nowoczesnym, z taką dynamiką tej konstrukcji.
At the same time, it was simple to produce, which was a major advantage for manufacturers.
Bardzo prosty w realizacji. Także projektant tutaj stanął na wysokości zadania.
In this sense, the designer met the expectations of all stakeholders, both the audience and the producers. What I haven't yet mentioned is that many of these 1960s designs are experiencing a renaissance today. There is a return to production of these pieces, and even designs from the early 2000s remain attractive and don't age as quickly. This is a testament to a designer's skill, avoiding trends and simply doing good work. A contemporary example of this approach is Tomek Regalik, whose furniture and other designs can also be seen here. Design from our part of the world has only recently entered the international stage. In some places around the globe, design has long been a much more important part of material culture, and even the broader culture of a country. For us, it's a relatively new space, despite our proud history. From the world's perspective, Polish design isn't widely known yet. It's only now starting to gain recognition. I believe we have a lot of work ahead, but I also think we have a lot to showcase. This includes a history that no one knows because it's been hidden, as well as the dynamic and creative developments happening now, particularly in the context of sustainable design. Poland, due to its current phase of development, is becoming a place where production still thrives. There's an abundance of creative energy, and where people are eager to undertake exciting new projects. It's an incredibly creative space. I believe this convergence will lead to mmany significant developments in the coming years, developments the world will certainly hear about.